This is your video for Accentuate the Negative Investigation 1.4. This is video 1 of 2. The first video will be focusing on addition, and the second video will be focusing on subtraction. In both videos, we will be using the same modeling procedure of how to represent what is happening with the addition of subtraction, and that will be using colored chips. We will be using black chips and red chips. So I highly recommend that you pause this video, you find something black and something red that you can write with. If you do not have both of those colors, any two colors would work. You'll just have to pick one color to represent positive and one number to represent negative. So if you need to go grab something, pause the video and then come back. So when using two color chips, I am going to be using black to represent positive and red chips to represent negative. So those will be the two colors that I will be working with. So adding integers with the same sign. 3 plus 4. We're going to start with addition that everybody can do mentally, but sometimes it's best to start with something what we already know the answer to, so we can think almost backwards. So because we have two positive numbers, I am going to represent this with black chips. So I have 1, 2, 3, and then I would be adding to it an additional 4. Because I have all of the same color chip, I have all black, I can just add like normal and I would end up with 7 black chips. So that's how using these colored chips in this model works. So now let's look at -3 plus -4. Because we have negative values, I'm going to switch to the red. You can use whatever color you have selected or might have around the house. So I have 3 negative chips. I'm going to add to that 4, so I'm using the same model as the previous one, but negative instead of positive. Because I have all red chips, I'm going to combine them, and I end up with 7 negative chips, or a -7, and I should go back and write the answer for the first one where I would have a +7. Alright, the next one, 5 plus 3, these are positive. So I'm going to switch back to black, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's going to have 3 added to it. That gives me a total of 8 black chips. And this model would go a little bit faster if we were in the classroom physically just putting chips together versus having to draw them all in. Alright, next one, we're adding 2 negatives, but they do have the same sign, but because they are negative, I am going to switch to my red chips. So I have 6 of them. And I'm going to add to it an additional 2. When I look in, I see that I have all red. I count up how many I have, and there are 8 of them. But because they are red, it's a -8. So when adding with the same sign, whether they're both positive or they're both negative, we simply add like normal. So how is adding negative integers similar to adding positive integers? you can just write that you add like normal, add a negative sign to the answer. So nothing really changes as long as they are both positive or they are both negative. So that's the chip model when adding with the same sign. Let's look at how the chip model works if we are adding integers now with different signs. So one of our numbers is going to be negative and one of our numbers is going to be positive. The first thing we start with is a negative 4 plus 2. So I'd like you to add in your chips in the two different colors. Alright, I have my 4 red negatives and my 2 black. For these, I'm choosing to put them on my rows on top of each other so we can see the cancellation. The one important thing to remember is that we had talked about how a positive and a negative, how they are opposites on the number line, and opposites actually cancel each other out. So if I were to have one black chip and one red chip, those actually create 0. They cancel each other out. So with my negative 4 and my plus 2, and when I line them up, I can see that one set of positive and negatives cancel each other out. A second set of positive and negatives cancel each other out, which leaves me with 2 red left over, which would give me a final answer of negative 2 because my reds represent negative. Alright, go ahead and add in your colored chips for negative 1 plus 5. Alright, so I've got my chips. I can see that I have one set that's going to cancel out. That leaves me with 4 black that are left over, giving me a positive 4. Let's go ahead and look at 6 plus negative 3 and add those chips on our board. Alright, so we have our 6 black for the positive and our 3 red for the negative. I can now see that I have 3 sets of opposites that cancel each other out, leaving me with 3 black that are left over, or 3 positive chips. So the sum of 6 plus negative 3 is a positive 3. Why don't you go ahead, try the remaining ones that are left, adding your chips. Then once you hit play again, you will see my chips added all at one time, as well as the answers that I came up with. You can see how you did. Alright, take a look at my responses and see how they hopefully match up to what you have. You can see that in the remaining ones that I drew in my black and my red chips, I crossed off where I had one black pair with one red because they are opposites and cancel each other out or give you 0. And I boxed whatever leftover chips I had. And if I had leftover reds, I had a negative answer. And if I had leftover blacks, I had a positive answer. And the last thing that you want to think about is the last question. What do you observe about your answers? And how might you be able to determine if your answer is going to be positive or negative? This one I'm not going to answer for you. I want you to spend some time thinking, and we will address this question in class.